Chapter 10, Trinity. A rather excited Jimmy began updating three adults all the major events that occurred over the last 2 days since Jimmy acquired the sphere. After he finished briefing them, he held the sphere up in the air again with both hands, quite expecting something to happen, but nothing did. In a way, it might have seemed comical, the way Jimmy was tossing the sphere up into the air, chanting, "Come forth, Reevan," or "Just do something, will you?" But there was no laughter in the faces of Alex or Uncle Rodney. After a few minutes of trying to keep an open mind, Alex decided he had enough. "All right everyone, Seth, Jimmy, and especially you Grandpa JJ, what kind of joke are you trying to pull on us? This is serious business, you guys." Alex scowled. "We have had FBI agents showing up at Uncle Rodney's house, asking questions about some sort of disturbance at the array yesterday and wanting to know if we saw anything unusual happening. And now, we have you three pulling a stunt like this. Then to top it off, we have this new story now about talking to an alien named, what was it, Reevan?" said Alex, seemingly exasperated. Jimmy was the first to speak up. "I know what you're thinking, Dad, but we aren't trying to pull anything, these things really did happen." Jimmy was also frustrated, looking down at the sphere in his hand. "It's all because of this stupid thing." Jimmy grabbed the sphere tightly, angrily, and then he rolled down the window to toss the sphere out of the truck. As he started to complete the toss, the radio began its own loud musical tirade. Jimmy's hand froze. "Don't give up on us, baby, we can still come through," the radio played on. "'Cause this is Thriller Night." The song played on as Seth began doing a dance routine in the back seat. Just then, the radio switched to another song, "Come Fly With Me, Come Fly Let's Fly Away." This time, it was Grandpa JJ who could be seen nodding his head to the beat of the song as it switched again. "We didn't start the fire, it was always burning since the world's been turning." As the radio continued for a few seconds longer, you could see Rodney and Alex staring at the radio with their jaws hanging down dumbfounded. "Stop, Reevan, that's enough," Jimmy yelled at the sphere. The music ceased. Jimmy then noticed a glow building up from within the sphere. Everyone in the vehicle watched in amazement as the glow quickly brightened, and then the sphere began to rise. "As you request, hello everyone," came a pleasant voice speaking to them over the radio, a voice that was now familiar to Jimmy, Seth, and Grandpa JJ. But Alex and Rodney seemed very confused as they continued staring at the radio, then the sphere and then back to the radio again. "I apologize, I sensed your anxiety. I thought that you would appreciate my attempt at humor. I must say, I do so like your music," Reevan explained. "Who is this?" Alex asked, disbelieving what he just heard. "How do you know who we are?" he asked, this time talking towards the voice coming from the radio. "You may call me Reevan, as your son and grandfather explained to you earlier." Rodney and Alex just stared at each other, shaking their heads in disbelief. "Dad, please. Remember, I told you, it's the sphere." "Oh right, so you mean to tell me that everything weird that's been happening is because of that sphere?" asked Alex, pointing his finger accusingly towards the sphere. "Precisely, Alex," said the voice of Reevan. "The sphere you see before you was manufactured with a variety of capabilities and functions. However, its main function is data storage." Reevan explained. "You know, Dad, like we use flash drives and memory cards for our computers," Jimmy explained. The sphere also was constructed to closely emulate the thoughts and memory patterns of Reevan, the pilot. "I could just as easily look and sound like Jimmy, for instance. I could also change my voice pattern to match yours, Alex, or any voice pattern stored in my memory." As the sphere continued to speak through the radio, the sound of its voice changed to match the voice of little Jimmy and then his father Alex. "So, what is your purpose here and why did you do to cause the disturbance at the large array yesterday?" asked an exasperated Alex. "I had data that I was programmed to upload to Epsilon Eridani. It was information collected by Reevan before his ship was damaged and crashed. Reevan was worried that his ship would self-destruct before the data could be uploaded and he made the decision to give the sphere to JJ." "I see, so what kind of data was it you collected, Reevan?" Alex asked. We have been collecting data on the people of Earth and their progress and development since our previous mission as well, especially your government and the use and development of nuclear weapons. So, that's why you chose this area, said Grandpa JJ. Yes, your world was placed under observation the moment you detonated your first atomic bomb. That detonation was detected by our monitoring probes. Human progress has been monitored closely for quite some time, since we first began detecting your early radio transmissions, years before that. There are some members of the consortium who feel that humans are just too violent and dangerous a species to be allowed access to space. The data I have been collecting, we believe, will show that humans have potential for good, as proved by your progress in the years since. Are these members the same ones you referred to as the others? Asked Grandpa JJ. Yes, they are. I needed to use the array to direct my signal. They should have already received the signal by now. I am currently awaiting a confirmation signal. Reevan, how far is it to Epsilon Eridani? Alex asked. It is approximately 10.5 light years, Reevan replied. Reevan, are you telling me you are expecting a reply from Epsilon? Grandpa JJ asked. Yes, that is correct. What's the matter, Dad? Jimmy asked, not sure why his dad and Grandpa JJ looked so surprised. Jimmy, normal radio waves travel at the speed of light. A radio signal sent to Epsilon would take 10.5 years to get there and the same amount of time to come back. That's 21 years round trip, Alex explained. Jimmy nodded his head. Your father's correct, Jimmy. However, we have learned how to accelerate our communication signals. The message that was sent yesterday should have reached Epsilon Eridani several hours ago. A confirmation message will be arriving within the hour. Alex, Rodney and Grandpa JJ stared at each other in disbelief. Reevan's voice suddenly stopped. Jimmy, I have been monitoring a vehicle that has been following you and your family since you left your house earlier. I have placed a cloak around your two vehicles. Would you like me to continue to do this? Reevan asked. Yes, please, Jimmy answered. Very well, you may continue to drive normally now. They will not see you, but one of you must communicate with your aunt in the vehicle behind and tell her to stay in close proximity to your vehicle, as my cloaking range is limited. Reevan explained. Rodney and Alex still weren't sure about what was happening, but Alex motioned for Rodney to call Marlene back on his phone and explain the situation. Rodney, let's turn this truck around and get back home. We've got to sit down and figure out what to do about all this. Alex looked over at Rodney. Can you call Marlene and tell her to follow us back to the house and stay close behind? Tell her, I promise to explain everything when we get back, said Alex. Hunter, I don't know about you, but I am getting very tired, and I want to go home. Stevens took a deep breath, pulled out a chair near Hunter's workstation and sat down. These guys have to realize, we've got lives, she pleaded. After all, it's nearly. Stevens paused and looked at the clock on Hunter's computer. 5:30 in the afternoon. I've been in the same clothes for over 2 days. She gave Hunter her please help me out look. Hunter continued typing, not seeming to notice the comment or the look. I do have a life outside of here, Hunter. You know that, right? Hunter looked at her and yawned. Come on, Alice, I thought you said you didn't have any social life anymore, he teased. Stevens gave him a nasty stare. He felt the same way she did, but also realized this wasn't his operation anymore. It had become more serious than he ever would have imagined. Okay, Alice, tell you what, I am finishing up one last thing here that Drake and I were working on for Colonel Schmidt. After that, I'll ask her if General Coulter will give all of us civilians some time off. He paused, looking for her reaction, but noticed her eyes were shut and her head was starting to down toward the keyboard pad. Gee, Alice, you really are tired. Hunter chuckled and turned back to his computer to finish his work. Stevens opened her eyes briefly from her cat nap, to take note the time, 5:40 p.m. Suddenly, as if on cue, alarms began sounding from all over the center. Stevens turned and glanced over at Hunter, who had frozen midstream in his typing. Hunter looked around the center, then back to Stevens. Oh God, what is it now? He asked bleakly. Stevens shrugged. Let's go over to the operations center and see what's going on, suggested Hunter. As Hunter and Stevens entered the main operations center, there were technicians running back and forth between workstations. Drake was busily comparing notes with another technician over at the mod comps. Hunter and Stevens carefully stepped over to Drake's station, trying to stay out of the way of the others. "What's going on, Drake?" Hunter asked in a hushed voice. "Not sure yet, we're getting a new signal. It seems that someone is accessing the antennae complex again," Drake explained. "The antennas are being aimed again." "Is this signal coming from inside the center?" asked Stevens. "No, but it's somewhere fairly local, I believe," Drake emphasized. "These NSA boys now have satellites set up to track the signal. We should be able to get a fix on its location as long as the signal keeps broadcasting." "Look outside, Hunter, the antennas are turning again," said Stevens. Hunter and Stevens stood and watched out the windows as the others in the operations center were busily working to find the source of the new signal. Suddenly, everything went eerily quiet in the room. They looked around as everyone was staring silently at their computer screens. Suddenly, the alarms were silenced, the antennas had finished moving. Within a few seconds, more alarms went off again. "Oh, great, now what?" thought Hunter, as he glanced over towards a very puzzled Drake. Drake looked at his computer before glancing over to his coworkers who just stood in middle of the room, looking bewildered. Drake's expression suddenly changed to one of astonishment. "Hunter, remember earlier this morning when we discussed the possibility of a reply to yesterday's signal?" Drake paused to recheck his computer. He swallowed hard. "Well, I think one is coming in right now." The Thompsons were nearly home when Rodney suddenly got an idea. "Hey Alex, I know a man named Jack Valerie. He's a retired geologist who works over at the university part-time. He and I play poker together occasionally in our poker club. He's a real smart guy," Rodney added. "I wonder, if we let him take a look at that sphere, maybe he might be able to give us a better idea of what it is and how it works." Rodney looked over at Alex. "Is he close by?" Alex asked. "He just lives a few houses down the street from me." "Why not, let's give it a try." Alex agreed. Jimmy and Seth looked at each other. "Dad, I think I can help you with that." "What, son?" Alex turned around to look at Jimmy. "I already had a man look at the sphere this morning, at a gem store in town." Jimmy stopped and glanced at Seth and Grandpa JJ. "He told us it was a diamond." "A what?" asked Grandpa JJ, Alex, and Rodney at the same time. "He said it was a diamond." Seth added, looking at Jimmy. "It was that little gem and mineral store we pass by all the time on our way to the river, you know, Dad, the one with the old man on the picture, Sam something." Grandpa JJ spoke up, suddenly realizing who he was talking about. "You mean old Sam Stevenson?" "Yeah, Seth, I know who you're talking about," Grandpa JJ continued. "He's had that shop down there for as long as I remember," Grandpa JJ said. "He told you it was a diamond, huh?" He looked at Jimmy and Seth. "Boy, you two sure got around this morning." "Yeah, Grandpa, we did, and Sam's partner even made an offer to buy it too," Seth added. "Then it must be. Old Sam's been collecting rocks around these parts for years. He knows his rocks, I'll tell you that much. If Sam says it's a diamond, then it probably is, or something just like it." Rodney quickly pulled out his cell phone again. "Don't worry, Alex, I'll give Marlene and the girls another call and let them know we are going to make a quick stop at Jack Valerie's place, and we'll be home right after that." "Boy, Mom is going to be mad at us when we get home," Seth commented. Alex, Grandpa JJ, and Rodney all laughed. "You're right, Seth, she's not going to be happy with us at all," Rodney added. Pacheco and Owens spent the last 15 minutes looking everywhere they could think of for the Thompson family and couldn't find them or their vehicles anywhere. Owens pulled the sedan into the parking lot near Escondido Lake and stopped to give them both an opportunity to look around. "All right, so how the hell did they just get away from us like that, Owens?" Pacheco roared. He motioned for Owens to turn the car around and go back to the road. "Take us back to where we first saw them pull off the road." he barked. Dang it, I should have stayed there in the first place. Getting sloppy in my old age, Owens, Pacheco added. He knew he was getting frustrated, and when he got frustrated, he got mad, and then whenever he got mad he got sloppy. It was a vicious cycle. Owens drove back down the highway and pulled the sedan off the road where they last saw the two vehicles, and then he quickly shut off the engine. Looking over at Pacheco, he could see him staring off into the distance, looking dazed and confused. Moments later, Pacheco got out of the car and began walking all around, looking down at the ground and going in circles. What on earth is he doing? Owens wondered. Owens decided it was his turn to get out and stretch his legs a bit as well. He had been cooped up in that car way too long today. A rest was warranted, he decided. What are you doing, Pacheco? Owens asked. Looking for their tire tracks. Come on over and help me out. I think they were right here, somewhere, Pacheco mumbled to himself. Owens began walking. He decided to walk the opposite direction of his partner. After he had walked about 20 feet behind the sedan, he discovered a set of tire tracks in the dirt. Hey Pacheco, over here man, I think I found those tracks you're looking for. Owens yelled to his partner, waving his hands around. It figures, Pacheco muttered to himself. The rookie finds them first. Damn it, Joel Pacheco, get a grip will you? He was relieved that the tracks were there, but still he was annoyed that Owens had found them before he did. Pacheco walked slowly around the area where Owens found the tracks. So, Pacheco, would you clue me in as to what you're looking for? Owens asked. Here are the tracks for the truck. Pacheco pointed to the ground. Here are the tracks for the car driven by Mrs. Thompson who was following them. Pacheco pointed to the area behind where the truck was. But here is what gets me, he paused, scratching his head in disbelief. Don't you see it, Owens? He asked. Owens glanced quickly around the ground where Pacheco was pointing. He shook his head. Pacheco must be losing his mind, maybe he needs a bite to eat, or something, thought Owens. Sorry Pacheco, I just don't see anything unusual here. Owens glanced around a second and third time, still, he saw nothing. He reached up and loosened his tie a bit. Hey Pacheco, you know it's about 5:30, why don't we head back into town and see if... Look here Owens. Pacheco demanded, pointing down at the tracks. This is where they were parked, but there are no exit tracks. He motioned around the area with his finger pointed down. According to these tracks, they never left this area. Suddenly the light bulb must have gone off for Owens because he started looking all around the ground frantically, giving his partner express. Hunter, Stevens, and Drake were huddled around the computer when the return signal came in. Drake began hastily punching the keys on his computer as they watched intently. Come on Drake, what can you tell us? Stevens asked. Sorry, nothing definite yet guys. Signal is still coming in, we will have to process it afterwards. Drake explained. Relax everyone, this might take a little while. Drake leaned back in his chair and looked up at Hunter and Stevens. Sorry you too, I heard you were trying hard to get us, civilians, around here some leave time, eh? Drake asked, looking towards Hunter first, then Stevens. Hunter stared at Stevens. Yep, that's right. But I guess that idea is pretty much out of the picture with this new signal coming in, we're still in the game it seems. That's okay, I don't mind. I'm finding all this pretty exciting stuff, compared to studying pulsars or neutron stars. Even so, I'm tired too, Drake yawned and momentarily turned his attention back to his computer. Well, just for everyone's information, offered Hunter. I did ask Colonel Schmidt earlier today about our roles around here and... He paused as he decided how best to continue. And what, Hunter? Insisted Stevens. Hunter was reluctant to tell them what Schmidt's reply was, he knew they wouldn't like it. She said General Coulter has ordered that no one leaves the center, until this whole mystery is resolved, one way or another, Hunter explained. He could see Stevens' shoulders droop down. Sorry Alice. I tried to argue that they have all the personnel they need to do the job without having to keep us tied down here, but she said Coulter brought up the national security issue, and that was his final word. You mean to say that no one on the outside knows about what is happening here? Stevens asked. Nope. They've managed to keep a tight security lid on this whole thing, I'm guessing, said Hunter. He could see the growing disappointment in Stevens' face. I don't understand, Hunter. How can they do this to us? Isn't anyone worried about us? Where are the news people and all their, cameras and all that? What about our families? I'll bet they're all worried about what's happened to us and why we aren't contacting them. Stevens complained. It seems that our families have all been told the same cover story, that there was a malfunction of the array and that we've all volunteered our time at the center this weekend to find and fix the problem, Hunter explained as graciously as he could. Stevens immediately stopped her ranting and stared directly at Hunter, then at Drake, who looked as surprised as she was. She angrily got up from her chair and walked to the door, stopping for a moment. That's just swell. Stevens breathed a heavy sigh, shaking her head. I'm going to get a drink, she huffed as she hurriedly left the room. Hunter sadly watched her leave. How badly he wished he could have given her better news. In a way, he almost felt guilty about it, like it was his fault this whole thing happened. He turned to Drake. Sorry about the bad news, Drake, he said. Nah, that's okay with me. I'm just a single, starving geek of a college student doing my summer thesis on neutron stars. It's not like I got a girlfriend back in Tucson waiting for me anyway. Drake smiled a bit. Actually, I kind enjoy the mystery of it all. He smiled, and then turned back to his computer. A few quiet moments passed as Hunter curiously watched Drake look over the incoming signals from the antennas and try to decode any messages they might contain. Drake stopped and leaned back in his chair looking over at Hunter. So what's your story, Hunter? Asked Drake, lowering his voice. What do you mean? Come on, I can tell you're interested, in her. Drake nodded his head slightly towards the staff lounge where Stevens had left moments earlier. You married? He asked. What, me, married? No. I was married a few years ago, for a little while. Whole thing lasted less than a year. 10 months actually, Hunter explained. No kidding. What happened? Drake asked. Several things happened, I guess. For one, we were complete opposites, fresh out of the service and, well, too full of ourselves. She liked adventure and travel. I wanted to stay in one place for a while and settle down. She wanted to be a marine biologist and I wanted to be an electronics engineer. I wanted to have a family and she hated the thought of kids around at all. Hunter paused and looked at Drake. Come on, Drake, don't worry about being a single, starving, college geek. When the time comes, you will find the right person. He explained. As for me, you could say I'm just holding out for the right one. What was that? Stevens asked, walking in on the last part of the conversation. Sounds like I missed something. Nah, just guy talk, that's all, smiled Drake. You all right, Alice? You seemed pretty mad there a minute ago. Drake asked. I'm all right, guys, don't worry about me. Just dirty, tired, grouchy, and hungry. Stevens suddenly realized she hadn't eaten anything in quite a while. Hunter nodded in agreement on that. Amen to that. Now that you mention it, Hunter stood up to head for the cafeteria. I'm going to go see what I can round up from the cafeteria. You want me to grab something for you too? Hunter asked. I'll come with, said Stevens. I'll take whatever you guys bring back with you, and thanks. Drake turned back to his computer and began looking over the signal feed from the antennas. No problem. We'll be back in a few minutes. Keep your eyes on that thing. Hunter joked as he left the room. I will. Drake continued monitoring the signal for several minutes. As Hunter and Stevens returned with their hands full of food, he suddenly realized the signal had ended. Hey, you two, I think I've got it. Signal finished, transmission complete. Can you tell us anything about it? A curious Hunter asked. Hold on, give me a minute, I have to look it over from the beginning. Drake carefully examined the transmission signal, You know the guys in the next room are looking for this same message over with a lot more sophisticated equipment than what I have." He paused. "This is weird." "What's weird?" Stevens asked. "Well, it looks to me like a series of repeating numbers. I just can't make out the... If I didn't know better, it sounds like the old-style Morse code. I would almost say they were." Drake was silent, deep in thought. Hunter and Stevens grew impatient waiting. Suddenly Drake reached over and grabbed a notepad and pen and began scribbling numbers wildly as he heard them played back. Then he would suddenly stop and rewind the recording again and repeat the process of dictation. "When I was a little kid, my grandpa bought me one of those old Radio Shack build-your-own radio kits for a Christmas present. You remember those, don't you guys?" Drake babbled on. "It was a do-it-yourself radio kit with a Morse code key and everything." Drake continued. "Come on, Drake, you're killing us here," said Hunter. Drake looked up with a huge smile on his face. "Hunter, you got a geomap or atlas around here handy?" Hunter jumped up and went over to the bookcase near the wall and shuffled through several books, finally finding the object of his search. He grabbed the large world atlas and took it to Drake. "Talk to us, Drake." "What are you seeing?" insisted Hunter. Drake broke open the atlas, looking at several pages in rapid succession. "These numbers look like map coordinates, but just where I'm not sure yet," he mumbled. "What numbers are you talking about, Drake?" asked Stevens. Drake showed them the notepad. It had the numbers 33.6773 and 106.4754W written down on it. "Well? What do you think these could mean?" Drake asked. Hunter and Stevens both stared silently at the numbers, neither one of them yet comprehending what Drake was thinking. "They're map coordinates, I'm almost sure of it," Drake continued, looking through the pages of the atlas when suddenly he came to a page and stopped. He froze, staring silently at the page before him. "I think I found it, let me just double-check." Drake leaned down close to the page, removing his glasses for a closer look. He carefully drew a circle on the map and stood up. Drake pointed to the map. "Look here," he said with a smile forming on his face. Hunter and Stevens leaned over the desk at the page to get a closer look at the place Drake had marked. Drake tapped the page, then held his finger down the surface of the map. "Trinity site," whispered the other two, quietly in unison.
You've been listening to The Thompson Sphere by David E. Farmer. Also now available on Amazon's Kindle. Hope you enjoyed this. Stay tuned for more chapters coming soon. Have a great day. Bye-bye.